Greetings and salutations. This is Emperor Vespasian and his trusty sidekick.
Hello.
Today we're doing an unboxing of a Panzer III Aust J, which is a Panzer III to everybody else. The Panzer III-J, it's complicated. This is the early war tank. This is was supposed to be the main battle tank at the outbreak of war. In reality, there were far more Panzer IIs knocking around than Panzer IIIs. They never really made that many Panzer IIIs to the outbreak. And then by the time the Panzer III had enough numbers to be the main battle tank, they'd realised the Panzer IV, you needed a bigger gun, and the Panzer IV had its howitzer taken out, a 75mm howitzer, and 76mm howitzer took out, and they put in a 75mm anti-tank gun. Therefore, the Panzer IV kind of leapfrogged over the top of the Panzer III. The Panzer III never really theoretically never became Germany's standard tank, because the Panzer IV kind of took its place straight away.
I hear more about the Panzer III than the Panzer IV, so I'm pretty sure the Panzer IV...
I think you're thinking about the Stug 3, which was the same chassis as the Panzer IV.
No, people always say the Panzer III.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people mention the Panzer III.
Oh, right. Different forums, I suppose.
I
suppose you're doing more desert stuff.
When I watched this film, which I won't mention the name of, because I don't think you're allowed to, and they used a lot of Panzer III in Berlin.
There were actually Panzer IIIs for the reserve army, weren't they?
Mm.
Which were used as training tanks. So
you know what movie we're talking about?
Yeah. So actually, probably there would have been quite a few knocking around. Panzer III gets kind of a bad rap. It's kind of either ignored, or because let's face it, it started the war with a 37mm gun on it, which was rubbish. Could do anything to a Russian tank. But then it was quickly upgraded to the 50mm, which is what these are. The 50mm gun is awesome, really, and really the Panzer III is the equivalent to the T-34. It's more or less equivalent armour for gun ratio. It's quick, it's very mobile, it can swim, it can wade. The design of the tank was actually designed for the Everglades in the United States. The company that made it built it for making a vehicle that can be taken through swamps. It wasn't meant to be a tank. Most tanks aren't meant to be tanks originally. They're meant for something else. And it was designed to be a vehicle that can carry people across swamps. And they had hoping to get a contract in the United States for it. In the end, the American government bought the LTV, the Landing Vehicle Tracked, which is a big Panzer III basically. But they went with the local company instead of German because the war broke out. So yeah. That's a long story, but that's. I know I had a German guy at an event when I was young, going all into details. He used to drive one, and he was telling us all about it. He was, no, this did this did that, and it's got all sorts of stuff. You can also cook coffee on it, coffee and tea on the engine. And there's a shelf for coffee and tea to be cooked on the engine on it.
Well, did the Germans use these in Stalingrad?
Yes. Yeah, it was probably more numerous.
How long was the siege of Stalingrad?
A year.
A whole year?
Well, if you think about it, they went in autumn, and the siege ended. Well, the fighting carried on for about 3 months after the siege ended, which was spring. So, if you include the 3 months or so where there were still troops holding out, despite everything else, but if you take it to the radio station going down, then it would have lasted about 5 months. So as a solid siege.
Was the Panzer III the main battle tank there?
It would have been the main. Yeah, there would have been more Panzer IIIs than anything else. Quite a few Stugs, which still had the howitzer mounted on it, not the anti-tank Stug that we think of.
Well, you don't really need an anti-tank on Stalingrad anyway.
Yeah. But the Panzer IIIs were very numerous in that region. You have to think of which army group was down there as well. We had more Panzer IIIs. There were hardly any tanks up north, and there were like practically no tanks in the southern bit below the Soviet Union, the southern bit of the Soviet Union, which is on telly a lot recently. the whole campaign in that area, right down to the place where Britain fought that
the
country
siege of Stalingrad
before.
really was 5 months, maybe to a year. It puts things in perspective nowadays, doesn't it?
Yes, it kind of does. Sorry, what was I saying? So as the siege went on, there weren't a huge amount of tanks with Army Group South anyway. With Army Group Centre anyway, because most have been diverted to different places. A lot have been pulled down south to Georgia. And there was all sorts of other stuff going on. Can't even name the tank units now. So, but there were the units starting with had to be pulled down south, and I'm not even going to go into it.
So,
right. So this is one of the old, one of the new put together bits. Each part has basically 13 parts. Each tank, and it is dead easy to put together. Way better with these, and you slot it all together. That's the base, and you end up with this guy. This guy is in nice shiny winter colours. Actually, it's in the standard 1942 grey, and they've just painted over it with a bit of white because it's left over from Barbarossa. It's before the time when they started painting the German tanks yellow.
As a kid, I always thought the German army was in black uniform and black armour.
Because they're in black and white and everything looks bad. Yeah. Later on, in the desert, actually that's a good picture there. In the desert, that's the colour they wore. Normally German tanks use that. By 43, the Germans were losing, and they started to camouflage their tanks. And so they came out of the factory in a sort of yellow colour, this colour. And in a box with each tank was 2 tins of paint, a brown one and a green one. And it was up to the crew to do what they wanted. And they would mix the paints, they'd buy paints from somewhere else, they'd pick paints up, and so you could have all sorts of colours. There was no standard colour, and so different units would have their own little markings and stuff. And by the end of the war, they looked awesome. They had some great colours all over them for camouflage. Can you tell me why grey was chosen as the primary colour for vehicles?
Maybe it assists you in nighttime warfare?
No, but you almost got to it. Black and white photographs.
You can't tell which...
Aerial reconnaissance.
Oh, okay. Oh, you can't see it?
You can't, yes. Also, in World War One, the Germans painted their artillery pink. Because in black and white photographs for artillery, in World War One, you couldn't see the guns because pink blends in with the ground and because.
But SS was black, right?
The uniform, yes.
Yeah.
But the actual combat uniform was yellow and was it green and brown?
Okay.
Camouflage. We can't talk about that tank unit, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm not even going to go into the camouflage for that particular unit anyway.
So,
right,
that's
so
the tank.
That's it. But that's the Panzer III, and as I said, it's pretty equivalent to the. I'd say it was equivalent to the T-34. And I know a lot of people are going to say, no, the Panzer IV was equivalent to T, or the Panzer was the Panzer was a copy of the T-34, made in Germany. But I would say for the T-34-76, this was the equivalent tank for the Germans. Whereas the Panzer IV is a much more upgunned version.
Yeah.
More suited for the Eastern Front, really. These guys fought all over the desert, and they were absolutely fine. They were great for the desert. And when they actually upgraded the Panzer IV in the desert as well to make it a better gun, the Panzer IV Special. So yeah, that's it.
Alright.
Yeah.
So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and comment down below what you think of Italeri Panzer III J.
Yes. Thank you for watching.
Same from me.
Goodbye. Everything from him. Goodbye.
See ya.